If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined by my good friend Jeff MD, CIA operative, author extraordinaire, aka 007. And it looks like John Martin is fixing to join us here. He's having some connectivity issues. We're live, John.
I think I've resolved them, sir. Let's go.
Well, good stuff. So before we jump in tonight's topic, which is going to be sanctuary cities essentially shielding terrorists, we'll hit the conflicted question first. And for those of you familiar or not familiar with these conflicted question of the day, these come from a card game called conflictedthegame.com. There's about a dozen different decks. They have all these questions that are in a post-apocalyptic scenario. So the question for tonight is, in the event you're preparing, if the event that you are preparing for becomes a reality, how do you think our society will look post-collapse? So kind of like a Walking Dead type of question, just different. So with that out of the way, quick reminder, if you go to survivaldispatchnews.com and sign up for a free account, you will get our weekly watch guide every Saturday, because for 2 years now, we've been getting flooded with emails saying that y'all aren't being notified when we publish new content. So the fix for it is just go to survivaldispatchnews.com, sign up for free. You get the Saturday watch guide, has links to watch everything. So I got one more thing before we get into the meat of it tonight. Let me pull it up here. So the one big, beautiful bill passed, for anybody who hasn't heard it, passed this afternoon. And here's a post from Gunther Eagleman. He's a former law enforcement officer. He escaped California, moved to the great state of Texas. And his post on this is breaking news. The one big, beautiful bill has now passed the House. Now it's on to the president's desk. Time to begin the largest deportation operation in American history.
Yes.
Jeff, do you want to add anything to that? Your comments on the beautiful bill?
Yeah, we were reading the news today, and my wife was watching live the vote. And of course, you get all these politicians waiting until the last second to vote and all this crap. But I hope to God that they go through with that and really start, deporting people. I know AOC was complaining because now that she says that ICE now has a bigger budget than like FBI and DEA and all these people combined. Well, I think that's horseshit, but I hope she's right. I mean, because I'd like to see them, put billions of dollars towards getting people the hell out of this country.
I don't disagree. And of course, there's a lot of content on X today with these liberals having complete meltdowns over this. And let me pull one up. I'm not going to play the video, pardon me, but I want to make a comment on this. So this is also from Gunther Eagleman. He says, wait a minute, I was just informed that this Jose Vargas guy is an illegal alien. And he is. And you can see in the back, I am an American without papers. He's got a website where he brags about being undocumented / illegal. I think that these guys have become disillusioned and think that nobody's going to do anything to them. They can just come out and disrespect our laws and disrespect our country. And now that the big, beautiful bill's passed with funding for massive deportations, these guys probably have a bullseye on their back. John, do you want to chime in before we get into the meat of tonight?
Yeah, the two comments I liked the best was apparently one of the members of the House who was a no, I think, texted the vice president supposedly and said, I was a firm no until I heard Hakeem Jeffries speak for a couple hours, and now I'm a yes. And then Speaker Johnson, when he got the floor, he made a comment that was right on time. He said, basically, when you're telling a lie, it takes a long time to tell that story. When you're telling the truth, it's very short. And I thought those two comments together really, really kind of summed it up. Myself, I'm hoping, I'm willing to give President Trump a shot to get back to some type of regular order. And he needed this without a doubt. Mm-hmm. But if they don't turn around sometime in this next cycle and actually get the deficit under control to a certain extent, I'm going to be very disappointed. That was the one thing in President Trump's first term that I really still hold against him, if you want to call it that, is I did not think that he got us back to regular order like he should have, and we've got to get back there somehow.
So, I mean, Donald Trump's a human being like the rest of us. He's not perfect. I personally think he's the best option for our country. But like you, John, I have some reservations over his first term, specifically Project Warp Speed. That still irks me to no end. And somebody asked Don Jr. what his thoughts were on Project Warp Speed maybe 6 months ago or so. And Don Jr. said it was a bad mistake. And the person said, well, do you think your father will ever own up to it? And he said, not a chance. I've never known my dad to say he was wrong about anything his entire life. So, you know, I guess that's what you get. But I will take Donald Trump over any other president in recent years, in my entire life for that matter. But this undocumented stuff and these people going on mainstream TV like this and basically saying that as Americans, we are bad people for wanting these illegals out and that we shouldn't be supporting them. Man, they got some balls. I don't know how else to put it. So speaking of balls, we just added a new feature this week where we're going to open up each episode immediately after the conflicted question with some fake news. And there's absolutely no shortage of fake news out there. So this page is a bunch of hoaxes that Donald Trump published 100 days in, or at least his team published. And I'm just going to hit on the first couple because I really want to get going on tonight's episode. But in no particular order, here are some of the most egregious hoaxes peddled by the usual suspects, legacy media, so far in President Trump's second term. So this is all relatively recent stuff. Hoax. Fake news. CNN attempted to fact check President Trump's claim that the Biden administration spent millions on making mice transgender. Fact. After their so-called fact check was thoroughly debunked, they were forced to update it in disgrace and admit the claim was in fact true. Hoax number 2, and there's 100. I'm only going to read a couple. The fake news claim that the Department of Defense removed General Colin Powell's name from a list of notable Americans buried at Arlington Cemetery. Fact. No service members' names were removed from that section, and General Powell's name remains among those listed. And third and last for tonight, we'll have more fake news on future episodes. Representative Eric Swalwell claimed no president presided over more plane crashes during their first month in office as President Trump. Fact. There were 55 aviation accidents in the U.S. between Biden's inauguration on January 21st, 2021 and February 17th, 2021, compared to 35 during the same period for Donald Trump. So the fake news is still going strong. I think that once RFK bans Big Pharma from advertising on legacy media, you're going to see a bunch of them fold up like cheap tents. But it's definitely something we still have to contend with. And we still are constantly chasing what's truthful and what's not. So let's get into tonight. And we've been talking a lot about sleeper cells and terrorism, and there's a reason for this. So the U.S. State Department today made a statement that they're very concerned that there's going to be an attack tomorrow on the 4th of July and that they have credible evidence and intel that that's coming tomorrow. So this is U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce says the United States is actively preparing for potential Iranian terror attacks on the 4th of July. And then after that, let me show you this. So Command 11 essentially specialize in open source intel, and they're really, really good. And this is their reply to that warning. We really wish DHS, ODNI, and CIA would stop beating the Iran-Hezbollah drum alone. The threat to the U.S. is multi-ethnic, multifaceted, and spread across the U.S. The continued failure of USIC, so intelligence community, is looking at part of the threat, believing that it is the entire threat matrix. Remember, just a few days ago, complex coordinated terror attacks was coined as a media-friendly phrase after Idaho. Idaho was not an Iranian. That was a neo-Nazi based on the story being sold by the media, which we don't buy at all. Stop looking at the threat through blinders and recognize every level: Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, cartels, Iran, Hezbollah, radicalized social groups. This isn't one-sided. This will be a multi-front attack designed to overload domestic, regional, and federal resources. Stop deceiving yourselves and open your eyes to all levels of the attack. Jeff, I want to get your input on this because what comes to mind for me is the enemy of my enemy is a friend of mine. And we've seen lots of intel showing that these groups are coordinating together, even ones who traditionally don't like each other. This is not something new, though. So if you could pick up with that and maybe give us some education.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'll get, I could see the Israelis actually cooperating with the Saudis if it was against the Iranians. Because while the Israelis and the Saudis don't like each other, they hate the Iranians more than they hate each other. You know, history is full of examples of that. You know, we sided with the Soviet Union in World War II because we both were fighting, you know, the Germans and the Japanese. So, yeah, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Absolutely. Until he quits, till maybe the enemy is defeated. And now that my friend becomes an enemy again. You just never know. But yeah, you got to look at everything on the threat matrix. There's Islamic terrorists, there's all this stuff, but don't forget Antifa. Antifa has caused more damage and hurt more people in the United States in the last, you know, 4 or 5 years than probably any single terrorist group. I mean, how many people died during the George Floyd riots? BLM probably is responsible for more deaths than Al-Qaeda in the United States over that same time frame.
Yeah, and as John Wheaton has noted, amongst others, the level of sophistication amongst Antifa is quite a bit more sophisticated than they were just 4 years ago. John, your thoughts on this warning that our intel community is tracking a potential attack or attacks tomorrow?
Well, I think there's certainly that strong possibility. I mean, July 4th is such a pivotal point for America. It's supposedly the time that we all come together and put our differences aside for the greatness of America. Obviously, that is not happening as much as it used to, but it definitely would be super symbolic to hit us on that day. There's no question about that. And we probably, under normal circumstances, kind of have our guard down. I get the feeling that a lot of people, especially probably people in your audience, aren't going to let their guard down. My concern I'm definitely concerned about terrorist attacks, but I'm also concerned about creating a fear among us that we don't, because what good is freedom if you don't live free? You know, so it's a mixed thing, because they can terrorize us without actually firing a shot if we live in fear all the time. So I worry about that as well. And be honest with you, I've actually worried in the past about not just major events, but small. I don't want to give them any ideas, but like small towns. When I used to be the mayor here in my little town, I worried about that, because I think in a way hitting like New York City or something like that, yeah, that's an expectation. But if you hit a small town, not only are they vulnerable, but I think that would send as much a shockwave across America that everybody is a target. So I worry about those types of things as well.
Yeah. So Jeff, let me run a couple things by and get your input on this. So my understanding of the intel that's out there, open source intel, and plus our contacts, is that the individuals who are essentially radicalized quickly online, these lone wolves, there's always the concern that they would attack these smaller venues or smaller towns. But Al-Qaeda and ISIS being a spinoff of Al-Qaeda, have stated numerous times, and recently as well, that the next attack on America, they want a minimum of 50,000 casualties. So if I'm understanding things correctly, you've got these radicalized lone wolves that are going to do bad things at smaller scale, like the guy in New Orleans. But we've still got to be worried about the more organized, better organized, funded organizations doing bigger things, especially swarm attacks in small counties that don't have enough, law enforcement to respond.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, Al Qaeda, they like publicity. They like the splash, the show. And they'll go back and hit a target multiple times if they don't get it the first time. If people don't, if you think about 9/11. But
Right.
in 1996, there was an attack on the World Trade Center where they used a truck bomb. It just didn't work right. And killed a couple people, smoke inhalation, fires, that kind of thing. But it didn't have the impact that they wanted. So that's when they went back and they did 9/11. Now, if they're looking for 50,000 casualties, they're not going to do that in some little backwater town in Kansas. So they're going to want something that's showy. If they just go someplace and shoot a couple of people, I hate to say it, that happens fairly often in the world, and it doesn't make the news that much anymore. So if they want to make a splash, it's probably going to be in a big city or at a big venue, and their method of attack is going to have to be different if they want 50,000. I mean, you look at all the logistics and everything that went into 9/11, and it's a miracle only 3,000 people died. Those buildings are big and they're full of people, but we only lost 3,000 people. So It's not as easy as people think it is.
No, not at all. I look at this a couple different ways, and I'm not a professional like you were in the CIA, but I think of it in terms of all the intel that's been brought our way, all of the open source intel that's at our disposal. You have large venues are a concern for a terrorist attack. That's not going to stop any of us from living our life at all. And to John's point, and we preach that frequently, you can't live in fear, but that doesn't mean you can't be prepared and can't have a plan in case bad things happen.
Absolutely.
So you've got the bad guys saying they want a minimum. Even the Iranian government has said they want a minimum of 50,000 casualties in the next attack on the American homeland. So that basically points towards things like open air venues, football games, concerts, where you have these large stadiums. But the other piece to it, which has come to us from multiple people who've worked with the JTTF over the years, and for those of you who've already heard me say this in the past, I apologize, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when this is going to happen. There's been credible intelligence now since the early 2000s that AQ in particular, Al-Qaeda in particular, drew up blueprints for just arbitrary numbers, 12 sleeper cells to attack 12 schools today in a small county with less than a population of 200,000, knowing full well that even with mutual aid from surrounding counties, there's no way they could respond to all of them. They might lose a cell or two, but then the following day they move to the next small county and attack another 10 targets. And then by the third day, they attack maybe 8 targets. But this happens. The AQ plan was to make this happen across the entire country. Can you imagine the just how we would be in condition black as a country, right?
Yeah.
People would be frozen dead in their tracks by the third day. So I don't think that I don't think the odds are greater for big or small. I think the odds are the same across the board myself. So
small targets are easier. Big targets make a bigger splash.
Yep. So let's move on to this video here. This is from ABC News. So if we're not going to watch the whole thing, but if we did, there is some kind of kooky, I don't know what you want to call it, woke progressive interpretations here, but I'll play the beginning, which essentially reports on this statement that was made today.
And the FBI and Department of Homeland Security are issuing a warning about large 4th of July celebrations. According to intelligence bulletins obtained by ABC News, the federal agencies say the biggest threats come from both lone offenders and small groups. Senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky joins me now for more on this. So, Aaron, what exactly do these bulletins say, and how are officials preparing?
Well, they do say that lone offenders and these individual groups that are wanting to make a point pose the biggest threat to large-scale fireworks celebrations in places like New York and San Francisco and Las Vegas. And there's been a heightened threat environment in the country ever since October 7th and the attack in Israel. And that's continued to fuel people with an agenda. And it's not the only thing that's fueling people with an agenda. There are other agendas. The political environment of the country certainly doesn't help. So police are being told by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security to be on watch for these types of things, which are notoriously difficult to guard against.
And they say these big celebrations are, in their words, attractive targets. What exactly did that mean? And they're still pointing out some differences, though, between them. Tell me more about that.
It means different things. In some cases, like in San Francisco, where petty crime has been quite a problem, you put 250,000 people on the wharf, and you know there are targets of opportunity there for thieves, and also for something involving mass casualty. But that's one specific difference. And in New York, another difference is it's got a spy problem. It's the home of the United Nations. It's a global capital, and so police in New York say this is an opportunity for foreign governments to get a look at how police guard big events, and that itself may pose some kind of a threat. So there are a lot of different things that police are being told.
So I'll go ahead and stop that there. John, I want to get your input on that video. And then Jeff, when it comes back to you, I want to, actually, I'll wait until we come back to you with the question. John, go ahead and weigh in on that video.
Well, we were talking about it a little earlier about, you can't live in fear and all of that kind of stuff. I ultimately think, Chris, and I'd love to hear Jeff's opinion on this as well, that the ultimate prevention, if there will, of this is to let it be known that if this were to happen, whatever and Donald Trump has done this, you hit us with one thing, we're going to hit you tenfold. And that if Iran is proven to be behind something like this, even if it's one of their surrogate groups, that they're done. And they have to believe that. I think ultimately, I'm not saying don't take precautions. I'm not saying don't investigate, don't infiltrate these groups, all those things. But the ultimate protection is going to be if the powers that, because it's one thing to ask somebody to strap a bomb to themselves and go blow up. It's another to strap one on yourself. And so I think that's the ultimate protection, is to have a policy that if you come after us, you're done. No matter what it takes, how long it takes. And to me, that's the ultimate security right there, because I don't think you can prevent every single thing from happening. A determined madman or an organized group can get through about any kind of security at some level.
So just a couple quick comments and coming to Jeff. Number one, the Iranians love to do terrorist activities by proxy through somebody else. That's a big part of their MO. So not surprising when they use somebody else. But we had a discussion last night with Mike Glover, Randy, Jeff, and I, and some of the attacks these days are really, really hard to attribute to somebody. And you'll have people claiming that they were the ones behind it when they weren't, just to make themselves look bigger. And if we can't assign that attribution to somebody who actually did it, it's hard to retaliate against them. But Jeff, you kind of touched on this, and just wanted to expand a little bit on these organized terrorists in particular, like AQ and ISIS. They like to do test runs, just like they did at the World Trade Center. The fact that they didn't take it down wasn't a loss to them. So this guy made some comments in that video about them being in New York City and other large cities and studying our policing and looking for weaknesses. Give me your thoughts on that, as from the perspective of a CIA operative, as far as studying a law enforcement agency and then finding weaknesses, then exploiting them.
Well, yeah, sure. You do it with the law enforcement, you do it with a counterintelligence group. And from the CIA perspective, the best recruit you can ever get for a spy is someone inside their agency that's trying to catch you and your guys. So, okay. Yeah, that's what you want. You want someone inside their counterintelligence. Well, if I'm an Al-Qaeda guy or someone like that, I would want someone inside the New York counterterrorism squad, inside a JTTF somewhere, if I could manage it, so I get an understanding of how they prepare, what their plans are, how would they respond, and more importantly, where are there holes in their coverage? Because no coverage is perfect. So if they can say, okay, yeah, they've got it A, B, and C, but they haven't done anything to protect against D because they assess it's a low risk. So yeah, I would want to go find somebody who knows the inner workings of my target, and more importantly, the response to that, so that I could better plan an operation.
So let me add this to the mix. So there were two reasons we chose this topic again for tonight. One is because of the statements made today with regards to, potential terrorist attacks tomorrow. But the second reason is sanctuary cities harboring not just the illegals, but terrorists who are here illegally as well. And if I was going to bet on anything, I would bet that it's most likely that we'll see terrorist attacks in blue cities where they're sanctuary cities, and these sleeper cells have been able to exist and carry on below the radar because the sanctuary cities aren't even looking at illegals. They're not even looking at people who don't belong here. And unfortunately, that includes a lot of our major cities as potential targets. So again, we're not going to live in fear, but if you live in a large blue jurisdiction that's a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state, you have to have an enhanced level of situational awareness when you're in public these days. The days of going out and standing around with your face buried in a weapon of mass distraction like this, they're gone, because people who do that are easy targets. And condition yellow walking outside, you look both ways before you cross the street. That's not safe anymore either. You have to be in condition orange, and you have to be watching what people are doing, body language, arguments that happen. Like Jeff likes to point out, it's 100 degrees in the summertime. A guy walks into your restaurant with a trench coat on. That's probably a sign that the guy's up to no good. It's like Sesame Street. Which one doesn't belong? Well, that would be the one that doesn't belong. So we're going to stitch this together with sanctuary cities, tonight. But here's another video. It's a short one. I'm going to play about 2 minutes of it. Threat of sleeper cells in the U.S. has never been higher. CBP, so our border protection.
Hi, Kelly. Well, these sleeper cells have long been the worry of the intelligence community. And by definition, sleeper cells, for those who don't know, are spies or terrorists who are in our country or Western countries and inactive until they are essentially ordered to act. And experts that we've talked to said that should the U.S. join these strikes against Iran, they may try to activate these sleeper cells in the U.S. and the West. A recent Department of Homeland Security threat assessment concurs. It says, we expect Iran to remain the primary sponsor of terrorism and continue its efforts to advance plots against individuals, including current and former U.S. officials in the United States. Now, that echoed similar guidance from the Biden Department of Homeland Security in 2024. And now experts say, given this escalation between Israel and Iran, the possibility is very real. Here's Barak Senior. He's a senior fellow at the Henry Jackson Society.
As the conflict in the Middle East escalates and Iran is being targeted, the regime thinks to itself, okay, we are on our last death throes, and therefore we will go out with a bang, quite literally. Its calculus will be very different if its survivability is threatened. Intelligence services in the US are working overtime to contend and mitigate risks and threats that can emerge on its domestic soil. The more protracted this conflict goes on, there is heightened risk for both US forces and assets in the Middle East, but also to US security domestically.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop that there. I want to read a couple things off of the report that the first gentleman mentioned. And actually, a quick comment on the last gentleman. When he said, as a last hurrah, if they feel that they've lost everything, I've said for years, that the guy who has nothing to lose is a scary guy. So, and I don't know if we're at that point yet with Iran, but it doesn't mean we wouldn't get to that. So just a couple snippets here from the threat of sleeper cells right here. Terror attacks through various proxies. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis are Tehran's preferred method of asserting its power. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that Iran has sheltered senior al-Qaeda members for years. So moving down here to what happened from 2021 to 2024, here's the numbers. And again, the numbers we have from the government, JJ Carroll will tell you straight up, whatever the CBP publishes, you can at least double it. They're giving numbers that they know they can back up with, documentation. But he said for sure it's double. So check this out. Iranian border encounters surged under Biden. According to DHS's Office of Homeland Security Statistics, Border Patrol agents apprehended 1,750 Iranians who entered illegally between February 2021 and November 2024, a 20-fold increase compared to the prior 7 fiscal years combined. CBP officers encountered an additional 7,260 inadmissible Iranian nationals at the ports of entry during the same period, a more robust 62% increase over the combined total of financial year 2014 all the way through to 2024. Of course, the difference between those Biden CBP numbers and in previous years is that most of those encountered under Biden were released into the United States in violation of the Immigration and Nationality Act and after vetting that was imperfect at best. So the reason I wanted to read that in, Jeff, I'll go to you first and then you, John, is to draw a point to just how many terrorists are in our country that are connected to Iran. And let's keep in mind, Iran is not it, right? Just like the other guy said, you can't just focus on Iran. There's multiple attack vectors, but just Iran alone, the numbers are staggering. There's got to be at least 10,000 SIAs, special interest aliens, that are tied to Iran that were let in by Biden and Mayorkas. I mean, it's a big number.
Yeah, it is. And, but if you're Iran, why the hell wouldn't you take advantage of our open borders? You want to put people in here. You want to put cells in here. You want, why the hell not? And if you're an Iranian soldier and someone says, okay, we'll pay you to go live in America, they would go, yeah, okay. Does that mean they're going to blow something up once they're here? Maybe, maybe not. They may say, screw it, I like it here. I don't want to go back. I'll just stay here. But how many true believers do you need? And I would assume they're screening these guys. They're not going to, they're sending people who they can trust to do it, to follow orders.
So, Jeff, give me an idea of if you were still active in the CIA and you uncovered a plot that said that there were 10,000 terrorists in the country planning to attack us domestically, coast to coast. How difficult is it to get to their goal of 50,000 casualties? And just how extreme are we talking here as far as having 10,000 people attacking us at the same time? I know we're a big country, but
yeah, but no, you could get 50. If you have 10,000 guys, you can get 50,000 easy. All you got to do is get in a truck and drive into a crowd on 4th of July. Heck, you can get 10, 5, 10, 15 people that way. Look at New Orleans. Right. So it's not that difficult. But you'd have to have all 10,000 guys committed and doing it and everything else. But yeah, it would have to be piecemeal, and it would have to be relatively simultaneous, because once word got out, everybody's going to be on edge. Mm-hmm. And somewhere like Florida or Texas, man, anybody looks sideways at you, there's going to be about 20 firearms pointed at them. San Francisco, New York, yeah, they're in trouble. But for areas that still have the Second Amendment, they're going to probably fare better. But if I'm a terrorist, I'm going to take that into consideration, and I'm probably going to target the places where I'm less likely to get wrapped up.
Yeah. So just quick numbers. And again, we're going to do an upcoming episode on 9/11, and we're not going to get into all of the different theories tonight on that. But let's just take the fact that you got about 20 people or so basically committed the the most significant terrorist act on American soil. If you take 10,000 bad guys divided by 20, that's a 500 times multiplier. So think of, I'm not saying that they could pull off the same scale as they did on 9/11, but think of 500 9/11 type events happening across the country. Even if it's 50, like 1/10 of that, you're talking massive chaos and confusion and societal breakdown.
Well, and 9/11 was a complex plot. It was years in the making. They had these guys in flight schools, and they got over here, and a lot of them were over here legally on real visas and all that. And it took a lot of logistics on Al Qaeda's part, and it was probably their sole focus for a long time. Now, are they going to be able to pull off 500 of those? No, not at all. But you don't need to. If you're going after 5, 10, 15 people, and you're going to do it in 200 different places, that's more practical. All you got to do is get a guy, say, okay, find a gun, and on July 4th at noon, go out and shoot up a place, or go drive a truck into a crowd. It's not as complex. It doesn't have to be 9/11. Yeah, that one's spectacular. Don't get me wrong, but if you're just looking for bodies, a lot of easier ways to do it.
So, John, I want to come to you next on the fact that you were a mayor and you were the city controller in Gainesville as well, correct?
I was a city manager in Hawthorne,
City manager.
and I was mayor before that, city commissioner.
City commissioner, okay. So what's the protocol for small town USA when you all of a sudden you have terrorist attacks occurring? Who would be in control of the situation for you guys locally in a small town? What would the chain of command look like from you on up?
Well, it would be our sheriff would be the first line, because we don't have our own police force. So it would be the county sheriff. And, Florida's blessed. We talked about this on a previous show with some very solid sheriffs. We have a brand new one, and he's a Democrat. And I don't know that much about him. I haven't worked directly with him. So I don't know about that aspect of it, or how they would work with us on that. But it would start with the county sheriff. And then, of course, depending on what information came out, you might have Florida Department of Law Enforcement, stuff like that, and even the FBI, if there was some type of credible threat to your area. You really need to, the thing that, obviously if someone has something like a car bomb or something like that, there's difficult to deal with that without a continuous law enforcement presence. But you'd want to make sure that your critical sites, like your wells for your water, your sewer system, especially water, was protected, and you kind of knew what was happening there, and people couldn't easily get into it. So you have surveillance cameras and that type of thing. What really concerns me, think about this. In order to carry out 9/11, let's say, without getting into all the details and all, you have to have a certain will of those types of people. To fly a plane into a building and basically commit suicide, you have to have a certain will. Well, to a certain extent, I think we have to match that will. We have to have a will. For instance, while we were talking about this, I was thinking about the Boston Marathon and those people. The two brothers, especially one of them, was on the radar screen quite a bit, and wasn't like people were all that shocked that he did it, but no one really took any actual action to stop it. And then you look at, like out in Colorado, I know it's not really terrorist per se, but you had this Tren de Aragua taking over apartment buildings, and people can see it, but they're literally denying that it's even happening, that it's exaggerated and all that. So I think we're going to have to, at some level, match the will that these people have to do it. And I think we're capable of it, but maybe not with the disarray that we have right now. When you have like Mayor Bass out in LA literally telling ICE agents and the federal government that you need to leave our city and that type of thing, how does that help with all of this infiltration of these people if you have the mayor, who's supposed to be the leader, literally saying y'all need to get the hell out of here? So That's what scares me the most is, can we match their will? Because if we can't, then we're going to have some real problems. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I see it.
It does, and actually dovetails into my next question. So, Jeff, we had the conversation last night with Mike Glover and Randy on this 5th generation warfare, and Mike made a comment that kind of stuck with me. And he said, you're losing the information war. You're losing this irregular warfare when you have officials in your own country speaking against your own country's best interests. And I would have never thought that we would have politicians doing what John just mentioned, like Karen Bass or any of these other lunatics who are defending this stuff. Give me an idea, what on earth is possessing these politicians to put illegals before the rest of us? Is it just simple, straight up money in their pocket, or is there more to this?
It's money and power. I mean, the goal is to get the illegals legalized, get them to vote. We've seen so many cities, blue cities, 100%, that are saying, yeah, we want to make it okay for non-Americans to vote. We want to make it okay and they always say, well, in local elections. Well, they shouldn't be voting in any election. We want illegal aliens to vote. We want illegal aliens to become police officers. And we've discussed this before, like in California was doing it. If you have an illegal alien as a police officer, is his loyalty going to be to the country, or is it going to be to whoever made him a police officer? Then it becomes kind of a glorified gang. And then we see the media being totally disingenuous. I think it was the ABC called Tren de Aragua a clique, not a gang, not a criminal enterprise, a clique. Well, a clique is the snooty girls in high school. Okay, that's a clique, not gang members who are tatted up and going to shoot you at the drop of a hat. So for the liberals, one, I think a lot of them just hate the country, to be honest. I think they just hate what America stands for. They can't compete. They can't get ahead in their mind. They're not in power. They can't attain power by working hard and being successful and having people respect you. So they've got to use the government to take away power from someone who's maybe earned it, power, goods, money, houses, whatever you want, and then give it to them. We saw it in the Soviet Union, and they had their 1%, just like we have our 1%, but their 1% was on the Politburo. They didn't earn their way there. It was all just political machinations.
As you were saying that, the old adage came to mind that equality of opportunity does not equate to equality of outcome.
Absolutely not.
And these people pushing socialism and communistic values are very confused and think that everybody should achieve the same or get the same outcome, whether they put skin in the game or not. Quick question for you, Jeff. I don't know if you've been tracking it or not, and I'm trying to remember who brought this up. It might have been Keith Graves, but the illegal aliens, and California, of course, wants to call them undocumented migrants that are on the LAPD and the LASO. Somebody has to give them a gun. And it's against the law. It's against the law.
Yeah, it's a federal felony to provide a firearm to an alien, illegal or not. So if you're from England and you live here, but you're still a British subject, non-American citizen, you can't own a firearm.
Right. So my question was, I don't know if you've been tracking this or not, but whatever came of those illegals who they brought into the police agencies in LA County, and they admitted to giving them guns. They said they had a process, an SOP, where when the person went to go on patrol, they would sign out a gun to them. When they came back from patrol, they would take the gun. The armorer would take the gun and lock it up. It's still illegal.
Yeah.
And nothing's happened.
As far as I steal your car, I'd go for a joyride, but at the end of the joyride, I take it back to your house. Still car theft.
Yeah, so we should look into that and try to get an update on that information. I'd like to know what exactly is going on there. So moving on to the next one here, FBI's frontline defense countering terrorist sleeper cells in the United States. I'm going to play a snippet of this video as well, and then I'll come to you first, John.
Hezbollah isn't just a risk to Israel. New intelligence warns the terror group could soon strike Americans. Defense experts agree Hezbollah has the ability to attack U.S. interests at home and abroad. National Security Correspondent Caitlin Burke reports.
According to new data gathered by U.S. intelligence agencies, the risk of an assault by Hezbollah is rising alongside growing tensions in the region.
Hezbollah is a very real threat to us here in the United States.
Simone Ladine, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Mideast Policy, says the Iran-backed terror group has a longer reach than many others in the region.
They have sleeper cells here in the U.S. in many cities across the country. This has been documented in multiple court cases. And we have reason to believe that they also have caches where they have stored materials around the country in the event that someone hits the go button to start attacks. I believe they are pretty well prepared. They have been sitting in wait for the order to go for many believe for years now.
As official Washington proceeds with caution due to concern about sparking a wider regional conflict, experts like Ladine warn we're already past that point.
I think that we collectively are in an expanding regional conflict. And
so I'm going to go ahead and pause it there. And there's a reason that I chose that video from the Biden admin. I wanted to make a point that this isn't something that just all of a sudden popped up with Donald Trump's second term. This has been going on for years, and even the incompetent and illegally installed administration for the last 4 years has admitted to it. So very specific questions for you, John. When you were mayor and a counselor, what kind of intel was shared with you guys from your SO or potentially higher the state? Did you ever during your entire tenure get any intel with regards to anything that would remotely resemble terrorism?
No, not unless I asked questions myself. They never came to me with anything. Sometimes I would ask questions concerned about, like I said, about our water supply and stuff like that. And I would get responses about how to protect it and that type of thing, and that they were on it. But I never was approached with any particular direct contact with that. Now, I did have some people. I have a friend of mine that works he's an amateur sleuth, so to speak, although he's pretty good at it. And he would tell me about things that he had heard and stuff like that. And most of them proved to be true. But the thing that really concerns me too is that when you look at like this guy, Tim Walz, okay? Now here's a guy, and you talk about fake news, kind of what we're talking about, that here's a guy who love him, hate him, disagree with his politics. You know, I mean, he was educated in America. He's an American citizen by birth, all that kind of stuff, went to, rose up in the power, served in the military. I know it's controversial, all that kind of stuff. And yet he has literally said about 2 weeks ago that maybe it's time for China to actually be the leader on the world stage. And then you have all these young people that may be listening to that and thinking, well, this guy's got it together. He's a governor. He was almost vice president of the United States and all that. And you wonder, do they really believe that crap? Are they so politically motivated that they're spewing this crap out to influence the young people? Because the only real defense that we have, in my opinion, ultimately, is an educated public that's educated and motivated and activated. We see a lot of people who are activated and motivated right now, but they're not educated. And then you have, Jeff mentioned Antifa a while ago. Well, as soon as he said that, I was thinking about Jerry Nadler, another leader. He literally said when they're burning down the West Coast over there, he said Antifa is a myth.
Right.
So I'm concerned about the message that is coming out to our young people when there's polling that just showed you that only about 40% of people in Gen Z, I think they call it, actually are proud to be Americans. So to me, that is as great a threat as any, that we're not going to have that will to stop these people.
So I've got one more kind of general question with regards to Gainesville in particular. I've worked in that part of the state at times, and it's a big blue dot in a red state. And the University of Florida has a lot of people from other countries that are typical of what we see in these protests, pro-Hamas stuff and everything. And actually, before I forget, do you want to see my Jerry Nadler impersonation? There it is.
I heard he's the one guy you don't want to sit by in any committee. That's
right. So anyway, back to University of Florida in Gainesville. Have there been protests? I know that you went out and you did some live streams on these No Kings days. What did that look like, John? Because I never did get a chance to watch more than just the first minute or so.
It was basically old hippie Gainesville. I mean, that's one thing. Gainesville is like the San Francisco of the South. And so we have a lot of retired university people, government work people, and that type of thing. And they're just real old hippies, and they themselves aren't that dangerous, but their belief system and what they might harbor. Because I think about like that New Jersey governor not too long ago admitted and then kind of backed away that he had an illegal alien living in his house in his, attic or whatever, and dared him to come do it. There are people in Gainesville, without a doubt, in my mind, and they're highly educated people, that they actually would harbor someone like that because they just believe so much in that line, then going back to Vietnam and everything like that. And, so that would be something I would worry about in Gainesville. They could have literally a cell living next door to them in certain neighborhoods, and they'd probably smoke a joint with them or whatever if they did. I mean, they definitely would not report something like you or I might report if we saw something. So
I just wanted to give our audience a quick reminder that, we work 7 days a week on Survival Dispatch News, and our mission is to dispatch information so that y'all can be better equipped with the truth. And at the end of the day, we wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for our sponsors like CCW Safe and Carnival, which I'm telling you what, everybody on our team is super excited about Carnival. This is 100% American meat, no mRNA, no antibiotics, grass-fed and grass-finished, which is not the same, right? These are grass-finished. This bag weighs next to nothing, makes 1.5 pounds of beef. It's got so many applications. You can stack it up if you're a prepper, and you don't have to refrigerate it. You can take it on hikes with you. Takes like 10, 20 minutes max to reconstitute it. And this is grade A beef, by the way. You get pork and chicken as well. So we don't get an affiliate payment from them. We get a monthly stipend, and that monthly stipend basically means we don't have to punch time clocks to pay our bills like everybody else. And that allows us to do deep dives on topics and do our best to bring you the truth. So Jeff, I got a question for you that wasn't in the brief, but John just tweaked me on this. So in 26 years of being a CIA operative, without saying anything that you can't speak about, did you ever find somebody, whether it was in America or in let's say another country, like an allied country, harboring bad guys?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, if they believe in their cause, absolutely they'll do it. Yeah, so, you might be, you could be a Lebanese businessman and you're harboring a Hezbollah or Hamas person, or they have these networks there. You had Lebanese businessmen in South America who would just be, transport hubs for Hezbollah if they were trying to come into the U.S. or go south. Are they themselves actually Hezbollah members? Probably not. But they're like, yeah, okay, that works for me.
Sympathetic then. So, so theoretically, there are people in allied countries doing exactly what John just said, whether it be here or abroad.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for our audience's, information, Jeff was a CIA operative for 26 years, served around the world. And clearly there are things he can discuss in detail and things that he can't. And he's really strict as far as the stuff that's classified. So moving on to the next one here. Let me get the screen pulled up. We're going to play just a short part of this. Actually, so this one's only 1:39. So I'm going to play the whole video. Iranian sleeper cells, what to know about U.S. warnings. And this one was actually published just about a week ago.
Closely for potential threats in response to U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites.
We are the nation's capital, and we stand at a heightened state of awareness.
It comes as Attorney General Pam Bondi works to assure lawmakers the Justice Department is proactively preventing attacks.
We have thus far arrested 1,500 illegal Iranians in our country.
Bondi would not elaborate on potential Iranian sleeper cells in the country.
That is something that I would like to talk about in a classified setting. But yes, have they invaded our country? Yeah. Absolutely.
Bondi went before senators to defend her department's budget request, which is $2.5 billion less than current funding levels. Some lawmakers say they're concerned that that could mean.
Well, not sure what happened to the video there. That must be the end of it. Anyway, suffice it to say that one government official, the only reason I chose this one is one government official after another's come out over the past few years have basically said they're here. Jeff, when did we first know that Iranian funded or trained terrorists were here in America?
Probably since 1979.
No shit. All the way back to the.
Well, yeah, when the Ayatollah took over, actually he wasn't the first one. Shapur Bakhyar was the first guy. There were a lot of Iranian students in the United States, and some of them, I had friends in college who were pro-Shah, and they were not going home because they couldn't. But there were a lot who were anti-Shah, and you saw it on college campuses when they held our people were hostages. And you had Iranian students on campuses in the United States openly supporting the Ayatollah and, saying death to America. At my university, University of Arizona, it was like 1981, I think it was. No, it's 80. No, it was earlier than that. I'm sorry. Whenever they took them, it was 78, I think. There were Iranian students that had a table on the mall, basically, saying rah rah the Ayatollah. And they had a picture of the Ayatollah in there, and a big fight broke out when this big old cowboy walked up there and ripped it off the wall. And then a brawl started. But yeah, that was in the 70s. They've been here ever since.
It happened at University of Florida as well. I remember it, even though I was a teenager myself. I always paid attention politically growing up. The family I did, Chris and Jeff, and it the same what Jeff is describing at his university absolutely happened at the University of Florida, without a doubt.
Yeah. So just want to address a couple comments in the chat. So as far as sleeper cells are concerned, the number that we were given from people who were working with the JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, in the 1990s, there were over 300 known terrorist sleeper cells in America that had anywhere between 2 and 12 members in each one of them. The numbers we've been given recently that have come from CBP and ICE and DHS, where we have a bunch of friends who either just retired or retired within the past few years, is that it's not hundreds of sleeper cells anymore. It's thousands of sleeper cells. And it's specifically, because of the last 4 years having the border wide open. So nobody is questioning the fact that they're here, and nobody's questioning the fact that it's a lot of sleeper cells. So there's no downplaying the size of this threat at all. And anybody who, kind of puts it off and says, oh, well, we don't know for sure that there's thousands here. We do know for sure that there's many thousands here. And you can bury your head in the sand if you want, but it doesn't change the fact that they're here. They hate us, and they have stated intentions to attack us. This next one, I'm not going to play the video for. I just wanted to throw it up as an example. College campus, ground zero for Iranian sleeper cells plotting to harm America. Experts warn. Let me just say this. I think the term sleeper cells doesn't really belong in this, because the reports that I've read on college campuses is more so radicalization of lone wolves as opposed to sleeper cells. I just wanted to draw a point, though, that they are breeding for this stuff. Go ahead, John.
Can I make a quick point? Because in your notes on this story we're just getting away from, you said that the Hill published what appears to be soft-pedaled article about Iran. And that soft-pedal jumped out at me because just this week, CNN basically gave a how-to app through an app, literally on live TV, to how to evade ICE. So, yes. I mean, it's one thing we got sleeper cells, but we actually have the mainstream media working to help these people. I mean, and this, if they're willing to do that out in the open, my God, I don't like to be conspiratorial, but what will they do behind the scenes?
Yeah. So
it's just amazing. It pisses me off, to be honest with you.
For sure. So what John's speaking to is there's a smartphone app out there that'll tell you where ICE has been spotted and when they're conducting raids so you can avoid it. And Tom Homan has asked the DOJ to investigate it. He asked the FBI to investigate it as well. And we'll see what comes out of it. But Jeff, do you want to add anything to that? Because that blows me away that our media would be America so much that they want to help them.
This is the funny part. We're reading today that the app is kind of backfired because what people are doing is they're calling in "I saw ICE" and they're using like every Home Depot, every Lowe's, every hardware supply, every plumbing supply company, whether the ICE is there or not. They're using the app to scare the illegals out of their neighborhoods. And so they put an area where ICE is over here, and it's your neighborhood. You call in an ICE raid. There's no ICE raid, but all the illegals run off.
That's too funny. Speaking of apps, did you guys hear that there's been a guy who's been tracking pizzas being ordered in DC, and that he's found there's a direct correlation between secret things happening that the government does tonight, like an attack on Iran, and comes out the next day that there's a corresponding spike in pizzas being ordered to government buildings the night before. That's pretty crazy stuff. But anyway, so moving on to the next one here and just kind of stitching some of this together. Sanctuary state, sleeper cells, and a nation on the brink. You can thank Biden's regime's deliberate sabotage of border enforcement. I mean, you want to talk fake news. How many times do we hear these assholes, Mayorkas, Biden, Kamala Harris, one after another saying the southern border's secure? They were lying through their frickin' teeth. And then they wanted to codify a law that would have allowed over 5,000 illegals per day being granted permanent residency status because it's the only way we can fix the problem. There's no new legislation. Donald Trump just reactivated his executive orders. We now have the tightest border that we've ever had. Just a bunch of lying dirtbags, to be honest with you. But what is being called the largest ever ICE enforcement operation, this story is from last week, is last week, and what is being called the largest ever ICE enforcement operation, nearly 1,500 illegal foreign nationals were arrested, most of them hiding in so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. That's not just a number. That's a blunt warning. There are thousands more just like them living, working, and perhaps plotting amongst us, thanks to the open border ideologues and their enablers in blue state leadership. I mean, again, the bad guys are going to go where it's least likely for them to be apprehended or arrested. And that means sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties, sanctuary states. It's just like, Jeff, you remember the one that we did, and I think we commented on it recently, where they were interviewing some illegals, I think they were TDA related, in New York, that were robbing people in New York, coming to Florida to sell the stuff, then going back to New York to do more robberies. And when the interviewer asked them why they didn't just come to Florida and break into stuff here, they said, well, they'll put us in jail there. But if we go back to New York, even if we get arrested, they just let us go. It's crazy what these sanctuary cities have been doing. Next one up here, Tom Homan warns Iranian sleeper cells could be hiding in the U.S. as a result of Biden's border crisis. This is on the same story of the 1,500 Iranian nationals that we spoke about maybe 20 minutes ago. But this is recent. This is June 24th of this year. And I'm going to play a portion of this.
Welcome back. U.S. officials are warning of potential Iranian-backed attacks on U.S. soil through terrorist sleeper cells. The Trump administration says these possible threats could come as a result of the Biden-era open border policy, which sent hundreds of possible terrorist suspects into the country, if not thousands. We know millions more were gotaways. Customs and Border Patrol sources tell Fox nearly half of the Iranian nationals caught by Border Patrol in the Biden years were released into the interior of our country. Joining me right now is the White House border czar, Tom Homan. Tom, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And let me start with the Iranian threat, given the news of the morning. How big of a threat do these terrorist cells pose to Americans?
Well, it's a significant threat, and I've been talking about this for 4 years.
I know you have.
I was a Fox News contributor before I came back with President Trump, and for 4 years I said my biggest concern is the open border causes the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen. You know, every day, the average under Biden administration, every single day, the average was 1,800 gotaways, lone gotaways. People we had on video, drone traffic, sensor traffic. These are people we knew came to the United States, entered illegally. We don't know who they are, where they came from, why they're here, but they got away. And we know that number, 1,800 average every day. So every day I was complaining about that mess we had to clean up if we got back in power. And I tell you, ever since the election in November when President Trump won, I worked with a lot of people who's back with the administration now. We started the plans. How are we going to fix this? First, we got to plug the hole, secure the border. We had the most secure border in the history of the nation today because of President Trump. So we plugged the hole. Now we got to bail out the water, and that's what we started planning in November. We knew we had a big job to do, and we're working it.
So, Tom, I mean, when I spoke with Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, he told me that there are a lot of cells in this country. They're doing drug trafficking. They're doing human trafficking. And they know where some of them are, and they are cracking down on this. But what specifically do you believe these Iranian cells are doing?
I think they're involved in a lot of crime, right? Because they got to finance their activity. So Cash is right. They're in drug trafficking and sex trafficking. They're doing everything they can for funding. But we knew from day one. The good thing is under Trump, when President Trump took power in January, we didn't hesitate. We started on day one. The intelligence community is working on the gotaways that came to this country, trying to locate as many as they can. The FBI have been arresting quite a few of them. ICE has been arresting them. Texas DPS have arrested quite a few of them. So day one of the Trump administration, we acted upon this. So we didn't wait for the Iranian conflict to happen. We knew from day one, we got a problem with these gotaways. We got a problem with these national security threats in this country. And that's why President Trump on day one on the deportation operation, he said, we're going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats. We don't talk about the national security threats a lot because a lot of it's protected information.
Sure.
But we've been on this from day one, Maria. Thank God we got President Trump in the Oval Office.
Yeah, I've got.
So I'm going to go ahead and stop that there. And I want to just quickly go to this next story and then come to you, Jeff, on this. So former CIA officer, there are more than 1,000 jihadi sleepers in the U.S. planning major homeland attacks. And this is Sarah Adam, who's been on multiple podcasts. John had her on The Righteous Savages. And, of course, she's been on Sean Ryan frequently. So let me just read you the first part of this article. Keep in mind that this is a former CIA officer whose unconstitutional agency has used AQ, ISIS, and other groups, including neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine, to destabilize various countries. Consider that when she tells us there are more than 1,000 Al-Qaeda sleepers in the U.S. that are planning major attacks in the U.S., one must ask, how does she and others know this, and why are they not making arrests of these people? They can certainly count them, but how do they know there are this many unless they know exactly where they are and when they will strike? And so this guy goes on to talk about, it sounds like fear-mongering, but then Sarah Adams ends up dumping a ton of information on them. So coming to you, Jeff, and we seem to keep circling back on this Iranian connection, and let's try to distance ourselves from that. What is the terrorist threat from stuff that's not related to Iranian activities? In other words, not funded by Iran, not trained by Iran, but other state sponsors or other bad groups like, say, the TDA. You're on mute.
There are plenty of groups out there that don't like us. we're the big guys on the block. We're the wealthy guys. We're the world's policemen, whether we like it or not. We played that role for forever. So they're always getting pissed off at us. The Houthis would love to take a shot at us. Al Qaeda would love to take a shot at us. There are terrorist groups in Somalia that would love to take a shot at us. There's no shortage of it. And then you add to that, you got radical leftists, communist types, the Antifa types. Let's not forget in the bad old days, you had the Symbionese Liberation Army. You've had ELF and the Earth Liberation Front, which is a radical terrorist group, nothing to do with Iran. ALF, the Animal Liberation Front, eco-terrorist groups, nothing to do with Iran. So there's no shortage of crazy, violent people in the U.S. And I don't think Antifa is pro-Iran. They're just anti-America. And again, enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Interesting. So I got a question for you, John, that just popped into my head when Jeff was speaking there. So DeSantis passed a bill or signed a bill in 2019 that banned sanctuary cities across the entire state. So we don't have any sanctuary cities in Florida. Was Gainesville by chance a sanctuary city before that legislation was enacted?
Yes, they were.
Wow.
And they were pretty upset about it, threatened all kind of suits and that type of thing. And I don't think anything really became of it. And in effect, they're a sanctuary city now. I mean, they still act as if. And there's a lot of cities like that. Just because they're not officially a sanctuary city doesn't mean they don't act that way. Gainesville clearly acts that way. I mean, their city commission in Gainesville, I would put them right in line with the most liberal you could come up with, whether it be New York City or San Francisco. I mean, I have a lot of Facebook associates personally. I never comment politically on their stuff because I want to hear what they have to say. And believe me, they hate Trump. They love this new guy that's come on the scene in New York City, and they're literally the city commission of Gainesville is probably the most liberal commission. I'd put them up against anybody, and the county commission's not a whole lot different.
Yeah, that's discouraging to hear that. But Jeff, I didn't mean to get away from your input on other terrorist groups. So while you were speaking, I actually plugged it in to Grok because I had a suspicion it would spew out some woke BS garbage. And not to disappoint, that's exactly what it did. So you're going to be shocked. I'm telling you, everybody in the audience is going to be very shocked that an AI program by hardcore left-wing woke progressives says, drum roll please, white supremacists. White supremacists, the number one terrorist threat to the country. Somebody made a comment in the live chat before we went live saying something to that effect. And let me tell you, when Keith Graves goes and trains, federal law enforcement agencies, and somebody from the FBI or another federal agency speaks up over the past 4 years saying that middle-aged white guys are the threat, everybody in the room laughs at them and calls them a bunch of idiots, And the easiest way to respond to this is, if we were the threat, middle-aged white guys, you would know it. Trust me, you would know it. We own more guns than anybody in the entire world.
But just look, last week you had the new darling of the left, Jasmine Crockett, in that hearing literally say, I'm tired of hearing about illegal immigrants committing crimes. Let's hear about the white supremacists. And I thought the same thing you said, Chris, that if white supremacists were committing a lot of crimes, that's all you would hear about.
When is the last time? So sorry, I thought I had my screen up, but I've got it up now. White supremacist neo-Nazi groups, number one. So question for our audience. This time we got to do an audience poll. For anybody who has seen a video on social media in the past year where you've had a bunch of white people beating up other people in restaurants because they're fighting over a French fry or a burger, put a 1 in the chat. If you've not seen any white groups of people ganging up on other people in food establishments, fast foods, put a 2. So if you've seen these mysterious white, bad guys in restaurants creating a scene and beating people up and ganging up on other people over a French fry, put a 1. And if you haven't seen it, put a 2. I'm dying to see. Maybe one of you out there can send us a link and show us these videos of WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, assaulting people over French fries or burgers, whatever the case may be. We got solid 2s on 6 of the 9 platforms we're broadcasting to. Yeah, I've never seen that. No kidding. Neither have I. Somebody's got a link to it. I would love to see it. So moving on from there, back to the sanctuary city stuff. I've only got 2 tabs left. DHS exposes sanctuary jurisdictions defying federal immigration law. This was released May 29th, 2025. Sanctuary jurisdictions undermine the rule of law and endanger the lives of Americans and law enforcement. Today, the Department of Homeland Security issued a comprehensive list of sanctuary jurisdictions, including cities, counties, and states that are deliberately obstructing the enforcement of federal immigration laws and endangering American citizens. Sanctuary cities protect dangerous criminal, illegal aliens from facing consequences and put law enforcement in grave danger. This action follows the signing of an executive order by President Donald J. Trump on April 28, 2025. The order directs the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to identify and publicly highlight jurisdictions that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. DHS is committed to exposing these lawless jurisdictions to the public and making them accountable for not respecting the rule of law. So the next one is, imagine this. ICE arrests criminal illegal aliens, including rapists, kidnappers, and gang members in sanctuary cities. So this is kind of like the whole, this is gun-free zone signs. If there's going to be a mass shooting, it's going to be in a gun-free zone, because the assumption on the part of the bad guys is that nobody is armed and therefore it's safe for them to commit these heinous crimes. This is the same type of mentality where the bad guys know that if they come to Florida or certain jurisdictions in this country, they're not going to make it. They're going to get arrested and turfed out. So where do they go? Sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties, sanctuary states. And we have sanctuary states. It's not just sanctuary cities. So last word on sanctuary cities before we do the conflicted question and wrap up. Jeff, to you first, what's your advice for people who live in sanctuary cities and have nowhere to bug out to if the shit hits the fan? Give us 3 things that people who live in those cities should do. And then you, John, same question. 3 things that city dwellers should be doing who live in sanctuary cities.
Well, arm yourself. You may not be able to buy guns because a lot of these cities have big restrictions on them. You should be able to get something, shotgun, something. Arm yourself. Be prepared to go dark so it doesn't look like you're even there, because, light on at night, someone says, well, somebody's there, they got something I can steal. And then quietly prep, because if you can't bug out, you're going to have to hunker down long enough that if things go to crap, then you hope that in time things will normalize. You just got to survive the mayhem.
Good advice, John. 3 things.
Well, I think the first thing is be aware and don't make yourself a target. Because when I lived and worked in Manhattan, this old country boy, one of the things I found out was that somebody's going to get mugged. And you make sure that it's somebody, not you. And you have to try to make, you're not going to stop it. You're not going to stop somebody from getting mugged. But you can make sure that you're not the most, easiest target. And when I was younger, that was a lot easier. I think also try to find some like-minded people, whether it be in your church or some civic other organization, the Elks Lodge or the American Legion or something. Try to find some like-minded people and have somewhat of a plan if one area happens, that maybe you leave Jeff's house and you come over to mine because I'm in a better area or I'm more prepared than you and that kind of thing. I mean, myself, I've got a group of people that I know from back in my Tea Party days, because when I was running for county commissioner, they were all behind me. And I guarantee you, my Secret Service was at least as trained as Donald Trump's, because they were, I never worried about it because they were all armed. I saw them shoot and everything else. And I think the third thing is basically, as I said, be aware, have a plan. I know what I was going to say. It's better to seek forgiveness, that old saying, than ask permission. So if it comes a choice between your life or your family and someone else, even though the laws may be against you, you know, look what happened to that young man in the subway. He overcame one of the most liberal places on the planet up there. And so I'd rather be alive and stand trial than be carted off, you know. So
better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6.
Absolutely. Amen. I couldn't have said it. That's why he's a CIA guy, because he's got all that smart.
That's not my line. I wish it was.
Yeah, but you know, you investigated it, and we know you guys can pull from here and there and everything else, man.
So
I'm in good company. Hang out with people like y'all. That's what I would advise.
There you go. So quickly, just 3 quick recommendations for y'all, especially people who are new to the whole, I would say, prepper movement, for lack of a better term. If you are in restaurants, make sure you sit somewhere where you can see the entrances, and also survey where all of the exits are. So if bad things happen and it's happening at the front door, know where the fire exits are, know how you can get out. You can typically run through the kitchen and out the back door and hopefully escape anything bad happening. And when you're in restaurants or public places, you need to have an emergency word for your family. So avalanche, for example, if we're sitting at a table and anybody says avalanche, that means we're getting out of this place right now. There's no discussion. What's going on? Why are we leaving? We're just going to get up and leave. And the preferable situation would be for me to go out the front door while everybody else goes out the fire exit. So hopefully drawing attention towards me as opposed to the rest of our family and party. The next thing is do not get gas at nighttime. Gas stations, convenience stores are top 5 what are called transitional spaces, and where most violent assaults and robberies happen. So keep in mind, the bad guy wants one of 3 things: body, life, or possessions. That's it. So if you go in the daytime and you go in reputable areas, you'll be much, much safer. Do not run your tank of gas down until it's almost empty before you get gas. It doesn't cost you any more to top up when you're down to a half a tank. And also, if you ever had to bug out or get a distance, it's better to have your vehicle with a full tank of gas all the time than not. And the last piece just kind of goes with that. Just avoid the bad areas. Zillow, Redfin, a whole bunch of these sites for years had crime statistics by the zip code when you were looking at homes. And they took it out a few years ago because it was being racist. God forbid that somebody wants to know what the crime rate is in a neighborhood before they, buy the most expensive thing they're probably ever buying in their life. But you can still get that information in other places, and you probably know what your own backyard looks like. Avoid them. Just stay out of the bad areas. You should have no good reason to go there. And if you do have good reason to go there, make sure you're not alone and make sure it's during the daylight. So next up, we've got the viewer story of the day, and credit goes to Dale again. Dale is a news machine, and we've got a private signal chat for all of our guardians, which you can sign up for on our Substack. And it's an interesting post. Apparently 10 more states are now getting ready to open fun migrant prisons. We've started a trend here in Florida with Alligator Alcatraz. So we're looking at California Alcatraz, because that's the real Alcatraz. In Idaho, the Potato Penitentiary. In Texas, remember the Alcatraz. In Kansas, the state of Kansas. In Pennsylvania, Amish Alcatraz. By all right, that's probably going to be the nicest one of them all, just a guess. Massachusetts has a good one. Chief Warren's Teepee. All right. And in Maine, Stephen King miniature paper mache Shawshank Redemption replica. And we've got one in Toledo. We've got Farmer McGillicuddy's Inescapable Corn Maze in Indiana. And to wrap it up in Montana, Grizzly Gitmo. this is brilliant planning, and appreciate you sharing it with us, Dale. You're definitely a machine. So, conflicted question of the night. If the event you are preparing for becomes a reality, how do you think our society will look post collapse? Jeff, I'll go to you first on this.
Depending on how long it lasts, but it could. I think the cities are going to look like crap. I think the suburbs will be less so, and the rural areas will be in the best shape because they'll have food and all that. And people in rural areas tend to be armed. And if people leaving the cities think they're going to go into the rural areas to forage for food and steal people's stuff, they're going to have a very, very rude awakening.
Yeah, true story. John, your thoughts?
Well, this is going to sound kind of comical, but I'm halfway serious about it. Who would have thought that that Snake Plissken and Escape from New York, Escape from LA movies would actually become reality? I mean, because we're closer to that actually being a reality. Look what's happening in New York if they elect that guy, and it is an island. I see it being kind of like that, where there's people that say, there's no-go zones and places like that. I hope it doesn't come to that, but here's the thing: there are a lot, even in some of these worst places, there are a lot of really good people in those neighborhoods, but they're overwhelmed. So I think one of the things you're going to see is if things really hit the fan, that there are going to be people that we might not even think are like-minded like us, but have solid core beliefs, and they're going to come together and from all walks of life. And they're going to form bonds that we don't even think are possible now, because the human spirit is pretty tough. And, there is a core of patriotism still in this country. It's hard to fathom that sometimes, but I've found, because like on my fishing trips that I go on, there's people from all over the country, all different races, and they come together because they're all hardworking people. It's not cheap to do this. They have a passion, and it's amazing how many people of different creeds and colors actually think the same way I do, and they just get kind of overwhelmed with all the media out there. But I think one of the things you'll see is that like-minded people will find each other, and that's my hope. I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, we all do. So we want to see your answers. We're running out of time here. We're fixing to end this broadcast. You can put your answer in the live chat if you want. It's probably better if you put it in the comment section down below, or if you go to survivaldispatchnews.com, leave a comment on the article that goes with this video, and mash the thumbs up button while you're at it, please. So we're never more than 3 missed meals away from anarchy. So what the world looks like when the food supply is gone because people have looted the stores and the supply chain is broken down is you will have people literally killing each other. They'll kill each other almost for TV on Black Friday. Just imagine what happens when they're fighting for food. So like my recommendation, and this is not from me, I got this from somebody else a couple years ago, and I think it's one of the best solutions that's economical for people who live in urban centers. So 83% of Americans live in urban centers. The vast majority of those individuals have nowhere to bug out to. You're not bugging out to the woods and living off the land. So you have to bug in. And like Jeff said, you need to keep a low profile. Like if people smell you cooking food, they're going to come looking for it. They're going to want what you've got. It's not safe being in a city, but if you are in a city, number one, form a mutual assistance group, a MAG, and you can do all kinds of searches online. It'll tell you how to form a MAG for your community, your neighborhood. There's strength in numbers, but a really economical option, and again, I wish I had come up with this, is go rent a small storage facility in a rural town that's not too far away, but is at least 1 tank of gas away. The reason that you want that is if you go just a little bit over a tank of gas, if the shit hits the fan and people leave the city with a full tank of gas, they can't get to where you've bought this storage unit or where you're renting the storage unit. Put a bunch of stuff in the storage unit. I mean, heck, put stuff like Carnivalt and other freeze-dried foods in your storage unit, lots of water, ways to treat water, guns, ammo, the whole 9 yards, and periodically go to that small town and eat in a mom and pop restaurant and get to know some of the locals. And if the shit hits the fan, you now have somewhere to go to. You will have shelter. So shelter, water, food are the three basics, right? So you've got this storage unit. Let's say it's a 10 by 10 or 10 by 15 or even 10 by 20. You know, you've got somewhere to get shelter. You've got somewhere stocked up with preps. You already know people there. And if you're more than one gas tank away, it would give you an extra layer of protection from people coming from the city after society collapses, as far as marauders are concerned. So that's it for my answers on the conflicted question. Quick reminder, if you go to survivaldispatchnews.com, sign up for a free account, you'll get our Saturday watch guide. It has links to everything that we publish each week. We know that you're not getting notifications. Like somebody just commented on YouTube about 10 minutes ago that we should have many thousands of votes or views, pardon me. We used to get 100, 200,000 views on every episode of Survival Dispatch News before they decide to suppress us. And I'm not belly aching. We now focus on Substack more than anything else because it's a censorship-free platform. But when I go look at a video in YouTube Studio and 0% of the views came from notifications, that's suppression. That means that our users are not receiving in-app notifications or email notifications when we publish new content. So the easiest way to deal with that, go to survivaldispatchnews.com, sign up for a free account. You get the Saturday watch guide. You'll get our sit reps 6 days of the week. And in those sit reps at the very end, we provide links to everything for our paying members, but everything above the sources, you can get that for free. Paying members get the Sunday threat matrix on top of the weekend watch guide that they get. Beyond that, again, if it wasn't for our guardians and our vendors who support us, we wouldn't be able to do this. So CCW Safe and Carnival, and let's see, John, and well, tomorrow is going to be a rerun from something from the Best of Survival Dispatch because we all have things that we need to attend. And John, on this podcast right now, John Martin and Ted Yoho will be back on Saturday with their podcast. Ted was the congressional rep for Alachua County where they lived for 20 years. And John will be back Sunday evening, and Jeff and Randy and I will be back on Monday evening. That's it. Time to put a wrap on this. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America, and enjoy the closing video. It's a good one tonight.
You want to come out me and call me a liar, you kiss my ass. And all of you fuckers out there who are out there saying what you're saying out on social media, you stick it.
I was touching all the girls, but Trump was undercover. Forgetting it like a drunken clown. Always drama, rinse, repeat. Want you to think they're in demand. Super secret inside of favorites. Manipulation reaching to all day and night time. They want you on your knees. Puppets on string now, where the circus speaks. Always with loud mouths, watch the stream. Some are drunk and stinky. The circus freaks, every day they get dumber. The circus freaks, feel inside. Really right, circus freaks not right. Finally people see, yeah. Keep on grifting. Circus freaks, circus freaks. Get on the phone. You have to call President Trump. We know better than he does. Yeah, we're super secret strategists, insiders, and llama supplements.